Welcome to another deep dive with us. This time we're going to be exploring a novel called Shadows Whisper When Darkness Glows.
Oh, interesting title.
Yeah, and it kind of sets the mood,
Yeah.
because what we're looking at is how regular people react under extreme pressure.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of pressure are we talking about?
Well, picture this. You're trapped after some crazy disaster.
Uh-oh.
Fears are through the roof, personalities are clashing, and it all kind of reveals something about human nature itself, I think.
I like where this is going. So this book basically throws these characters into a pressure cooker.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating. We get to see their quirks and how they handle things.
The author really uses the setting to emphasize this too. It starts out in a super ordinary place, a plaza, bustling and familiar.
Right. A place we can all imagine.
But then, bam, disaster strikes. And that contrast between normal life and sudden chaos.
It's like the author's highlighting how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
You're going about your day and suddenly everything's different.
Definitely makes you think. So, who are these people stuck in this mess?
Well, we got Marie. She's the warm, supportive one, always the caregiver. Then there's Pat, super dependable, the kind of person everyone leans on.
Okay, I'm seeing some personality types emerge already.
And then there's Gavin, total take-charge leader type.
Oh yeah, those always come out in a crisis. But everyone copes differently, right?
Absolutely. We see that with Liam. He's a passionate activist, but he's suddenly forced to think about the group's needs right here, right now.
Interesting. So instead of big picture, long-term stuff, he's got to be practical.
Exactly. Makes him question, is it better to be effective in the moment or hold out for some bigger change down the line?
That's a tough one. Makes you wonder what you would choose in that situation.
Right. So before we get too deep into the group stuff, let's set the scene. A fuel truck slams into this plaza.
Oh, wow.
Imagine the noise, the darkness, and then there's the danger of an explosion.
The author really paints a vivid picture, I bet.
Oh, yeah, you practically feel the ground shake. And that's when those personality differences really kick in. Some folks freeze, others jump into action. But there's one character I gotta mention, Suzanne.
What about her?
Suzanne's a former nurse, but she's haunted by something from her past, some trauma.
Ah, so there's more going on beneath the surface.
Yeah, and she's forced to confront all that when the truck driver, Frankie, gets hurt, badly hurt. She's the only one who can really help.
Wow, that's intense. It makes you think about all the stuff people carry around. Those hidden burdens.
It's like trauma doesn't just vanish.
It makes a good point about mental health, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We need more support for that, especially when society kind of expects you to just get over it, which isn't realistic.
Not at all. So Suzanne's got to be strong for herself and D for Frankie.
And then we've got this clash between Liam, remember, the activist, and Ronan, who wants to take action immediately.
Okay, so two very different approaches to helping.
They both want to do what's right, but their methods are total opposites. Liam wants to plan everything out, be strategic. But Ronan's all about boldness. Do it now.
Classic conflict. Should you carefully plan or dive in head first? I see that play out in real life all the time.
Yeah, whether it's activism or even just making everyday choices. But here's the thing. In the middle of all this chaos, there's this strange moment of calm. Marie, always the caregiver, she starts making tea. Sounds kind of random, right?
Yeah, in the middle of all that.
But it's she's creating a sense of normalcy.
Makes sense. People crave that, especially when everything's falling apart. It's comforting.
Exactly. And then we have Isabel, the psychologist. She's kind of watching everything unfold, observing the group.
Interesting. So she's got this unique perspective, like an outsider looking in.
But even she's struggling, She's got her own vulnerabilities.
Right. Even someone trained to analyze behavior is still human.
Exactly. But what she notices is this connection forming between all these strangers. They're forced to see each other as more than just, first impressions.
Ah, so the crisis is bringing them together in a way, forcing them to connect on a deeper level.
And then there's the scene where a character, Pat, compares people to puzzle pieces.
Puzzle pieces. Okay, I'm curious.
He's been quietly observing everyone. And he says we all have our place, our purpose. But sometimes we don't fit together neatly.
Love that analogy. It's so true. We're all different shapes trying to find where we belong.
And speaking of seeing things from different perspectives, Isabel has this super vivid dream.
Oh, a dream. Now things are getting really interesting. I wonder what it means. So in this dream, right, Isabel sees all the characters, but they're like symbols.
Okay, so not literally themselves.
Yeah, it's more like she's seeing their personalities,
Yeah.
but then they start to like blend together, almost transforming into each other.
Oh, that's trippy.
It is. And I think it's the author's way of showing that connection, you know? Like, even though we label people as caregiver or leader or whatever.
There's this shared human experience underneath it all.
Exactly. And maybe those differences we see aren't so, I don't know, set in stone.
So it's not like black and white, good or bad.
No, not at all. The dream ends with Isabel realizing they're all part of something bigger, a pattern. It's kind of like, what does it even mean to be connected to other people?
Deep. Makes you think about those moments where you like randomly connect with a stranger.
Right, like you're both part of something beyond yourselves.
But back in the plaza, things are getting, well, pretty desperate. Hope's fading.
The tension must be insane.
Suzanne, who's already dealing with her past trauma, she starts to panic. And that fear, it spreads. Like it's contagious.
Makes sense. When one person loses it, it can affect everyone.
It's like even when you're trying to be strong, your anxieties can like spill over. Sometimes even the best intentions can backfire.
Absolutely. But then, get this, in this moment of pure despair, something totally unexpected happens. Danny, remember him?
Danny, the quiet one.
Yeah, the one who barely said a word.
Yeah.
He steps forward and sits down at a piano. There just happens to be a piano in the plaza.
No way.
And he starts to play Near, My God, to Thee.
Wow. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
The music has this incredible effect on everyone. Like it washes over them, calms their fears. It reminds them that there's something beyond the danger they're in.
That's so powerful. Like music really can do that, you know? Bring people together, soothe them.
And think about it, Danny, who was practically invisible. He becomes the hero in this moment.
Yeah.
It's like we all have something to offer. It doesn't have to be loud or flashy.
I love that. And it's such a great twist. We expect heroes to be bold,
Yeah.
you know, in-your-face kind of people. But here, it's the quiet artist who changes everything.
And it makes you think, who are the unsung heroes in your life?
Yeah.
The ones who might not be seeking attention, but they make a huge difference through kindness, creativity, support.
It's like the author's saying, hey, pay attention to the quiet ones.
Yeah. And even in a crisis, there's still beauty. There's art, connection to something bigger than ourselves.
It's not all doom and gloom.
Exactly. But unfortunately, this peaceful moment doesn't last. Remember, the rescue teams are on their way.
Oh, no. This is where it gets really sad, isn't it?
As they arrive, a part of the plaza collapses.
Huh.
And Danny,
Don't tell me.
he's killed instantly. It's just so tragic, especially after he shows such courage and compassion.
Ugh, my heart broke for him. It felt so unfair.
It's hard to process, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it also makes you realize the power of his final act. Even though he's gone, his music, what he did, it stays with everyone.
It makes you think about legacy, right?
Yeah.
How one person can impact others even after they're gone. And how do you find meaning in loss when it feels so senseless?
Those are tough questions. And the novel doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but it makes you consider them. It makes you think about what kind of impact you want to have on the world.
It's like Danny's death kind of brings everyone together, you know? All those arguments and anxieties seem to fade away.
Yeah, their shared grief creates deeper connection. It's a reminder that life's fragile, but also that we can find meaning, even in the face of tragedy.
It's like his act of grace brought them all nearer, my God, to thee, like the song he played.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final part of the book. We see how everyone copes with what happened, with their loss.
It's like the focus shifts from the external chaos to what's going on inside them. What happens after everything settles down?
It is a really interesting shift how the author does that. Goes from all this outward chaos to like an inward journey.
Right, like the accident peeled back the layers, everyone's raw and vulnerable.
And they have to face some hard stuff, like their own mortality, for starters. The choices they made, relationships, what kind of impact they want to have on the world.
It's all laid bare, and we see it in different ways. Gavin, for instance, Mr. Take Charge.
Oh yeah, what about him?
He gets kind of obsessed with finding someone to blame. It's like he needs that sense of control.
I get that. After something so chaotic, needing to make sense of it, finding order.
Exactly. But then you have someone like Marie. She turns inward.
Seeks comfort in her faith.
Yeah, and helping others. Even though she's grieving, she's still that rock for everyone.
Shows how resilient people can be. Finding meaning, purpose, even when things are rough. And then there's Liam, the activist. All that happened in the plaza, it really makes him rethink his approach.
He's always been about the long game, right? But after seeing how much people needed help right then,
Makes you wonder if aiming for the big picture is enough.
And he starts to question that. Not that he abandons his ideals, but
But maybe it takes a balance, planning, and taking action.
and seeing the humanity in the people you're trying to help. Which brings us to Isabel, the psychologist.
She helped the group deal with the trauma.
That she's also struggling with her own stuff.
It's easy to forget, even those trained to help others, they're not invincible. They have feelings too.
Reminds us that we all need support sometimes. So as the novel ends, everyone's dealing with the grief, these new connections they've made.
The impact of what they went through, it feels like there's closure, but also...
Their journeys aren't over.
Exactly. It's not all wrapped up in a neat little bow. It makes you think, what happens next? What did they learn?
I love that. It keeps those wheels turning in your head long after you finish the book.
So for those listening who haven't read this one yet, what are the big takeaways from our deep dive?
Ooh, good question. What do you think?
Well, first off, it reminds us that underneath all our differences, there's this common ground, being human. And that connection can be a powerful thing, especially when things go wrong.
It's also about how our personalities influence how we deal with stress, and that can be both good and bad, right?
Yeah, sometimes our go-to moves help, sometimes they get in the way. The book also challenges how we think about heroes.
Not always the bold, flashy types.
Right, sometimes it's those quiet acts of courage or just being there for someone. Those make a difference too.
And even in really dark times, there's always room for hope, for growth. The human spirit is pretty amazing.
It is. So to everyone listening, as you go about your day, remember those lessons whispered by the shadows. Look for those connections, you know. Don't underestimate the impact you can have, even in small ways.
Beautifully said.
Ah.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Shadows Whisper When Darkness Glows. Hopefully we sparked your curiosity a bit, gave you something to think about.
And maybe even inspired you to pick up the book.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.